Before you bring out the pitchforks, I'm not saying Devil May Cry 2 is better than the other games in the series. It's objectively the worst Devil May Cry game. The environments are way too empty and too big for their own good, so you spend most of the time just running around. The combat is unbalanced. For example, the melee attacks can't be cancelled, and they also have a very long recovery frame, meaning that you have to watch the animation play out before you can do anything else. So if an enemy attacks you while you're in the middle of an animation, there's nothing you can do. Then you have the stinger animation. Usually you would use the stinger to close down the space between you and the enemy because of how quick it is. In Devil May Cry 2, the stinger has this very slow startup animation which renders it quite useless. You're better off just rolling towards the enemy to close down the space instead. Beyond that, you've got the guns being really overpowered. You can pretty much go through almost the entire game by just using your ebony and ivory. You've then got the boss fights, which aren't the most exciting. I'm sure you all remember that infamous fight against the infested chopper where you literally just stand still and shoot at it while dodging the missiles every once in a while. Maybe you could spice it up a bit by making the dodges more cinematic looking. At least that's what I did. But yeah, Devil May Cry 2 isn't that good of a game. However, I'm somebody who likes to focus on games from a more atmospheric perspective. I will play an objectively bad game if the atmosphere and vibe is on point, and if you take those factors into consideration here, I do think Devil May Cry 2 does have a few good things going for it. I'm not defending the game, I'm just appreciating the parts of it that I like. Maybe I just have horribly low standards, I'm not really sure, but yeah, let's get into it. I want to focus on Dante. As we all know, in Devil May Cry 2, his personality is a stark contrast to the wacky woohoo pizza guy we know him as in the later games. He is more serious in this game, he doesn't talk much, and he has this coin flipping gimmick.
Your lucky streak continues, Granny.
I know people didn't really like this change, but man, I just think he is cool as fuck in this game. Every time he's on camera, he is doing something cool, like jumping off buildings, riding his motorcycle, killing enemies in style. And it might just be me, but I feel like Dante being less talkative just adds to the aura he gives off in this game. Look how cool that is. By the way, he does actually crack some jokes in the game, but they have a more sinister tone to them.
I was going to be the king of this world.
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
I actually like this version of Dante, and I hope Capcom can find a good balance between Dante's more laid-back, goofy side and his more serious side, because it's just my opinion, but I feel like Dante nowadays is just mostly known for the memes a bit too much. You've seen it all a million times. Him dancing like Michael Jackson, him being goofy like in Pizza, you've got the Virgil memes, things like that. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the jokes and the memes and his personality, but the problem here is that you end up having people from outside of the series only knowing him as this meme character, when you know he's so much more than that. But if you were to ask me, my personal favourite version of Dante would be Dante from Devil May Cry 1.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with...
No, I'm not talking about that. In Devil May Cry 1, Dante is still cracking his jokes.
Block off, Featherface, or you can stick around and find out the hard way.
But at the same time, there is an air of restraint to him. He still shows his serious side and he's still focused on the task at hand. I just think it wouldn't hurt to strip him back to this level and remind people that Dante is more than just the memes. Otherwise, you'll end up having shows like this. Yeah. But anyways, back to Devil May Cry 2. I want to talk about Dante's design. It's by far my favourite Dante design. It just looks amazing, and it's a shame it has to be in the worst Devil May Cry game. You have the slim fitted long coat with the black gloves. There's not as many buckles and straps here, giving him a more clean look. You also have the red leather being traded for a more velvet-like texture. Then there's the colour scheme. It's a darker shade of red compared to the other designs, which I personally love. I feel like it gives off a very gothic and aristocratic vibe. My second favourite design would be Dante from Devil May Cry 1, which is equally as good for similar reasons, though I think I prefer the cleaner look of Devil May Cry 2. Then there's Devil May Cry 3 Dante. It's by far my favourite Devil May Cry game, but I don't think Dante's design is the best here, because there's really not much going on here, to be honest. I think you can excuse it here though, because Dante in Devil May Cry 3 is young, arrogant, brash and cocky, and I think this outfit does a good job at reflecting that. You then have Dante from Devil May Cry 4. While I do like the outfit, I do also think there's too much going on here. There's too many straps and buckles. You've then got the cowboy chaps and the cowboy boots. But yeah, I do think I still like it in its own weird way. You then have Dante from Devil May Cry 5, where it's just my opinion, but he kind of looks homeless. It's probably because the clothing looks a bit more weathered here. But yeah, if Capcom do make a new Devil May Cry, I do hope they bring Dante back to his more gothic and stylish look. Moving on, we then have the environments of Devil May Cry 2. While I did say that they're too big and too empty, I do actually like them aesthetically. The first area is pretty bland, but as you progress through the game, you reach this more modern area where the environment has this gothic and urban look, which I love. It kind of reminds me of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is a game I love. I mentioned in previous videos how much I love the whole urban nightscape aesthetic. The streets are empty and you have this cold, quiet and mysterious vibe, which I think feeds into the game quite well, considering there's not much dialogue to begin with. Further into the game, you enter these buildings where the design gives off a very minimalistic, gothic and operatic look. There's just a very ceremonial and ritualistic look to everything. It kind of gives off a very Masonic-like infrastructure. I can appreciate that they tried to go for something different to Devil May Cry 1, which was more gothic and cathedral-like. Devil May Cry 2 went for a more realistic setting while still maintaining those gothic elements. I actually really like the aesthetic of Devil May Cry 2, and it's just a shame it's in a game that not many people love. Moving on, we then have the boss fights. Most of them are underwhelming, as I mentioned previously, but there were some that pleasantly stood out to me. Plutonian, Bulwark and the Despair Embodied. The Plutonian fight is quite intense, as not only can it throw its ball and chain at you, giving it a long range advantage, you also have these lasers spawning randomly, so you have to always be on your guard to ensure that you're not only dodging the enemy's attacks, but also the lasers. It's the good type of chaotic gameplay I like because you are still largely in control of everything. You then have the Bulwark fight where you fight him along with two wolves he summons. The fight is intense because Bulwark is just relentless with his attacks, and ironically he has the correct stinger animation. Though the camera can get quite bad at times, I did enjoy the fight. It's very close quarters, so there's very little margin for error here. You also have to time your dodges correctly, and once you get into a good flow state, it does feel quite satisfying. You then have the Despair Embodied. Like the other bosses I mentioned, it's quite aggressive and it's quite intense. It has a variety of high and low attacks. It can fly, it can teleport towards you, so you have to be on your guard a lot more as the fight forces you to switch up your moveset. I would have liked to see the bosses in a later Devil May Cry game to see how they would fare with the improved gameplay, but in the context of Devil May Cry 2 they were quite fun. I also want to talk about the music. The music in Devil May Cry 2 is also quite different from the later games. The more recent games have this high energy industrial rock / electronic sound with a high emphasis on vocals. I like it a lot and it really gets me pumped up. Devil May Cry 2 on the other hand, while it still does have its industrial and gothic elements, it goes for a more stripped back and hard rock sound, which I fucking love. The soundtrack had no right to go this hard for the game it was. It just gets me going and it's completely up my alley. You can probably hear it in the background, so let me turn it up. That's what I'm talking about. Even the song in the credits goes hard. There's almost a nu metal influence to the tracks here. I'm somebody who loves nu metal, so that's probably why the soundtrack resonated with me a lot more than usual. I wouldn't complain if they go back to this style in a future game. Before I finish the video, I want to quickly talk about Lucia. She is the second playable character in Devil May Cry 2. She has a separate campaign where you get to see the story from her point of view, while the levels are largely the same as Dante's campaign, with Lucia only having a different starting point. She does have quite a few exclusive areas which I found to be really cool, and not only that, she has exclusive cutscenes too, so you're not just playing the exact same story with a different character. And honestly, I think I actually prefer this format compared to the later games where you are made to switch characters after every few missions. Maybe I want to play as Dante for 20 missions. Maybe I want to play as Nero for 20 missions. I think it would be better for them to have a separate story where you just play as either character, and then after completing both sides, you then have this final ending route where you play a few missions switching between either character, wrapping up the story in a nice way. Devil May Cry 2 definitely had the right idea here with this approach. Beyond that, you then have Lucia's combat. She is much faster and more nimble than Dante, and I really liked her throwing daggers, though I found her damage output to not be as high as Dante. It's probably because Lucia's campaign feels like it's on a higher difficulty because they throw everything at you as soon as they can, so you have to be on your guard a lot more than Dante. And thankfully you don't fight the infested chopper in Lucia's campaign. You instead fight an infested tank. You can literally just stay underneath it and shoot at it, but I like a bit of danger, so I got on top of it. But yeah, despite that, I really enjoyed Lucia's gameplay and I would actually like to see her return in a future game. So I've covered quite a few things in the video, and like I said, it's not me defending Devil May Cry 2. I'm just appreciating the areas of the game that I like. You can see that the game had quite a few good ideas despite the execution not being the best, and that's largely due to the troubled development this game had. Devil May Cry 2 100% deserves a remake if Capcom ever considers it. I feel like a fully realised version of the game and its ideas would be a lot better than we would expect it to be. But yeah, let me know your opinion on Devil May Cry 2 and if you actually liked it or not. Thank you for watching, feel free to subscribe, I'll catch you later.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with
No, I told you we're not doing that.
light!
Fucking hell, I fucking told you Dante, we're not doing that. You don't listen